Good afternoon. The decision to return a shotgun and a licence to the man who killed 5 people in Plymouth on Thursday is being examined by the independent police watchdog. Jake Davison's victims included his mother Maxine, a 3-year-old girl Sophie Martin and her father Lee. Davison also injured 2 other people before turning the gun on himself. Our correspondent John Kay has more.
200 miles from Westminster, the Home Secretary came to Plymouth to pay her respects to the victims. Maxine Davison, the mother of the gunman, 3-year-old Sophie Martin and her dad Lee, Stephen Washington, who was 59, and 66-year-old Kate Shepherd.
It's tragic beyond words, really, really tragic.
Priti Patel promised to support the community with specialist help for anyone left traumatised. She wouldn't comment on news that the gunman, Jake Davison, had his firearms licence returned last month despite posting hate-filled rants online.
Home Secretary, should Davison have had a gun? You say you want to reassure people here. A lot of people have questions about gun control.
My brain can't process it. Physically can't process that information that I was given.
Chris says his family is reeling. Not only was his auntie Maxine shot dead, but it was her son that killed her. Chris never met his cousin Jake Davison and doesn't understand what has gone so catastrophically wrong.
It's impossible. You can't plan for this. You can't see the next day or the day after or the day after. You just literally take each day as it comes. But I just know that as a family, they will come together, be there for each other, and try to understand this horrendous thing that's happened, and also the other four innocent people that had no part in this. I'm sorry to everybody that's going through this. It must be the worst thing in the world, and I can't even imagine to understand.
Among those grieving, the family of 3-year-old Sophie Martin and her dad Lee, apparently shot at random as they walked home together.
They were definitely a pair, little and running around and, eating all the ice creams.
Only last month, the dad and daughter were watching the Euros with friends here at the Anchorage pub.
Amazing together, always mucking about and playing, and, he just absolutely doted on her. She was an amazing little girl. So, and he was a great dad. She hasn't even started her life. She's so little, and it's just, it's terrible.
This afternoon, Plymouth Argyle's match fell silent. Concerts have also been cancelled. 48 hours on, this city has so many questions and things are still so raw. John Kay, BBC News, Plymouth.
Well, our Home Affairs correspondent Daniel Samford is here with me. And Daniel, one of those questions is why Davison was allowed to be in possession of a gun.
Yes, and there's 2 elements to that. First of all, should a young man living in a city who had a history of mental illness be allowed to keep a gun at home at all? But the second element of that is that the certificate for his shotgun and the shotgun itself were taken off him in December because of an allegation of assault in September. But in July, the police returned both the certificate and the shotgun to him. And anyone who did any research on Jake Davison after he carried out the shooting could go through his social media history. They could see elements of depression, of extreme violence towards his mother being discussed, discussion of extreme violence towards other women, an obsession with mass shootings. And I think one of the questions will be, was enough research done on Jake Davison before that certificate and the shotgun were returned to him?
Daniel, thank you. Daniel Sanford there. In Afghanistan, the Taliban have continued to seize yet more territory and are now in control of more regional capitals than the government. The Afghan president, Ashraf Ghani, addressed the nation for the first time since the Taliban advance, saying his focus was to prevent further instability. British troops have been sent to help British citizens leave. Our Afghanistan correspondent, Sikandar Kamani, reports now from the capital, Kabul.
This is the very centre of Kabul. Thousands who have fled fighting across the north now live in these miserable conditions. This family escaped the violence, but say they still don't feel safe. We're thirsty, we're hungry, we have no home. Other makeshift camps are even bigger, but this, in the heart of the city, shows how quickly the country is unravelling.
We don't go back to the 19th century. Just we want to be, as far as we have developed here, we want to go further better. We don't want to go to the back where our sisters in our education sectors, in our government sector was so war-shattered that we don't want to go back to them.
Today, fighting erupted around Mazar-e-Sharif, one of the few major cities still under government control. Whilst in Kandahar, the insurgents cemented their position with their own flag-hoisting ceremony. Finally addressing the nation, President Ghani didn't comment on rumours he may resign, instead simply promising to remobilise beleaguered forces. For now, for many people here in Kabul, life is continuing more or less as normal. But the Taliban are getting closer and closer to the city, and there's increasing concern that a fierce and protracted battle for control of Kabul could be imminent. The speed of the Taliban's advance has led to the US and UK together sending in more than 3,500 troops to Afghanistan to repatriate their own citizens and many of their embassy staff. Many Afghan cities are now being handed over to the Taliban following local deals with the security forces. That may be the only way to avoid even more suffering in Kabul too, but would mean an end to life here as residents know it. Sikandar Kamani, BBC News, Kabul.
A major earthquake measuring 7.2 magnitude has hit Haiti in the Caribbean. That's bigger than the devastating earthquake which rocked the island in 2010, promising fears that many people may have been killed. The country's Prime Minister, Ariel Henry, has said the quake has caused huge damage across the south of the country. He's described the situation as dramatic and appealed to all Haitians to act in a spirit of solidarity. Here, the latest government coronavirus figures show that there were 29,520 new infections recorded in the latest 24-hour period, which means on average there were 28,715 new cases per day in the last week. Currently, 5,875 people are in hospital with coronavirus, and 93 deaths were recorded in the last 24 hours, which means an average of 88 deaths a day in the last week. Turning to vaccinations, more than 89% of adults in the UK have now had their first jab, and more than 76% have had both jabs. Meanwhile, in other COVID news today, some clinically vulnerable children in England are struggling to access a COVID vaccine nearly 4 weeks after they were made eligible for the jab. NHS England says at-risk 12 to 15-year-olds and those living with someone with a weak immune system should be offered a jab from the 23rd of August at the latest. The cost of NHS coronavirus tests for international arrivals to the UK has been reduced. Test kits have been cut from £88 to £68 for people arriving from green list countries and those coming from amber list countries who are fully vaccinated. The price of 2 tests for Amber arrivals who've not had both jabs has been cut from £170 to £136. Tests can also be bought from other suppliers. July has been confirmed as the world's hottest month ever recorded by US government scientists. Data shows that the combined land and ocean surface temperature worldwide last month was nearly 1 degree Celsius hotter than the 20th century average. Well, our correspondent James Reynolds is here with me. James, just talk us first of all through the figures.
Well, the US agency says that record you just described adds to the disturbing and disrupting picture which has already been laid out for the globe by climate change. We've got a map which shows some of those findings, and you can see that the pink bits are where temperatures were warmer than normal, but there are a bunch of dark red bits. That's where records were set. I'm looking particularly at the western states of the United States and Canada. You might remember they recently suffered from the effects of a so-called heat dome. And looking more globally, Asia had its hottest July on record, and Europe also had its second hottest July. One figure does stand out: 48.8 degrees Celsius. That was the temperature recorded this week in Sicily. That's almost halfway to boiling point. In practical terms, it's like walking through Sicily with several ovens opened in your face. That temperature was caused, we think, by anticyclones rising up from Africa, and the effect has been so bad that people have been having their air conditioning on day or night, leading to shortages.
And James, all this comes after a week in which we've had a dire warning on climate from the UN.
Code Red is what the UN Secretary General Antonio Guterres called it. In fact, there's no real worse. Once you get to red, there's nowhere else you can go. That was after a report which took, I think, 8 years to compile, gave several warnings, talking about heat waves, droughts and floods being likely in the future, talking about a key temperature point perhaps in a decade or so. All of this is going to be discussed in Glasgow in November. There'll be a very important climate change conference. I've just looked up the daily temperature in Glasgow at that time of year hovers at about 7 to 10 degrees. The political temperature, though, in the chamber will be an awful lot hotter.
James, thank you. James Reynolds there. Manchester United made a superb start to their Premier League campaign today with an emphatic 5-1 victory over Leeds. Patrick Geary was watching.
Two Uniteds sharply divided. If you wanted a game to demonstrate the difference having a capacity crowd makes, here it was. A chance to feel the expectation that followed Paul Pogba's pass to Bruno Fernandes. The goal and the reaction a long time coming. But under Marcelo Bielsa, Leeds attack in faith and numbers. The man coming onto the ball is their right back, Luke Ayling. Absolute mayhem.
There's an early contender for goal of the month.
What a moment, but just a moment. Mason Greenwood was born in Bradford but came to Manchester, here completely bypassing Leeds. 2-1. Now Manchester United pounced. Fernandes again. His shot cleared not off the line, but as it turned out, just over it. Goal. While Leeds want to be full fat going forward, they were thin at the back. One pass, one shot. Fernandes 3, Manchester United 4. And still they advanced. Now with Pogba. Play it right, said Fred, and he made it 5. Some start. The two Uniteds comprehensively divided. Patrick Geary, BBC News.
We are back with the late news at 10. Now on BBC One, it's time for the news where you are. Bye-bye.